Husker Du. In Denmark, Husker Du means do you remember? Around the world, Husker Du is more than a game. It's a memory exerciser that's fun for children and adults alike. A great family game that increases your alertness. Each player tries to find matching pictures by removing 2 discs. If the pictures match, he keeps the discs. If not, he must replace them. Will she make a match? Not this time. Can he do it? A star. He's seen that before. He remembers and gets another turn. 18 sets of pictures make it virtually impossible to memorize the Husker Du board. 2 or more can play as individuals or in teams. No complicated rules. It's easy to play Husker Du, the memory game that's great fun for the whole family. Only $3.99. Husker Du, another fine product from Pick'em.
It's the LIFERS podcast with Scott Lucas, Gabe Rodriguez, and Ben Reiser. And now, here's Scott, Gabe, and Ben.
All right, so should we do this pre-show?
Yeah. I'm doing something real fast for work. Because
you want us to wait? I
gotta give
some water.
I mean, like 2 minutes.
2 minutes,
all right.
okay. Yeah, all sure, right. Take it.
I'm gonna take a hit off of this vape here that I did.
Whoa!
Oh, come on! Today's 27. Yep.
Well, aren't you off of work?
I'm never off of work.
Listen, I know we're not allowed to podcast when you're at work, but why are you allowed to work while we podcast?
5:03. Okay. I'm almost done. Hold on.
It's okay. This is all going in the podcast.
I hope not. I'm on the clock. Kind of. Not really.
You're on our clock.
Yeah.
I know.
Some of us have lives to lead.
Are you done with work?
I had to take a break there and do something for work. Yes. Sorry about that.
Listen, we're not allowed to podcast while you're at work, right?
I get interrupted. I get interrupted at work a lot of times from personal stuff, and I sometimes
step not
away
us
from
podcasting. Not us podcasting.
We've done a podcast during my lunch.
No, we did it during your lunch, but that was your time. That wasn't company time.
Fuck your job, Gabe.
That's gonna be cut.
My point is that you're doing work on podcast time.
Yeah.
I'm being asked to take care of something for work on podcast time. Correct.
What's the
are they
crisis
aware
in the printing business?
Are they aware of what a good company man you are?
Company
man.
Bad
Company man.
Of how
it's a song from
how much they can count on you.
I'm going on my 10-year anniversary of this company.
Oh,
in November.
What are they going to get you? What is 10 year?
10 years of work.
Not to be confused with tenure.
Correct.
But what is 10 year? Is there like, did they give you like a watch or something?
I might get some kind of recognition of some kind, maybe. Maybe a snow globe or a water bottle or something. I don't know.
Oh, it's the company way is the song from How to Succeed in Business Without Really.
Well, I was thinking more of Glengarry Glen Ross. You company man.
No, I know what you were thinking. I'm just bringing my own. I'm coming at it from a different angle again, Scott.
It's been a while since we've done one of these, just the three of us, no audience, no Steve Rydell.
Is that right? Our Steve Rydell episode, we didn't have the three of us alone.
We did not have the three of us pre-show. We put in Steve from the very beginning, so it's good to see you too, without other people looking over our shoulders. Although, we could call Steve right now, and I think none of us would have a problem with that.
Oh, Steve is like the fourth stooge. Steve is Zeppo Marx.
Steve That's the fourth Marx brother.
Yeah, I know. I'm rattling. I was going to go through a whole list of.
Who's the worst stooge?
Well,
Curly Joe.
Curly Joe
for sure. Although I want to say that I respect Shemp, but honestly, if I turn it on and it's a Shemp, I'm like, whatever.
There are some good Shemp episodes.
There are some good Shemps, and Shemp is in other movies, just by himself. Like he's in some Abbott and Costello movies. He's very funny on his own. But
wasn't he? He was one of the originals.
Curly.
He was one of the originals.
The originals are the first three.
I thought Shemp came first before Curly.
No.
Are you sure?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we're sure.
I'm gonna have to look this up and get back to you.
Look it up right now.
There's something in my head that's saying that he was briefly with them at the beginning. Then mostly it was Curly, and then after Curly, Shemp came back.
That's why I say he's the original.
Way.
Look it up. I'm looking it up right now.
Because if this is the truth and this is a fact, I want to know. I don't want to live a lie any longer.
All right.
There's no fucking way though.
They were part of vaudeville. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mo Howard, joined by Healy's act in 1922 and his brother Shemp Howard.
And
the violinist.
But that's not the Three Stooges.
Well, with Larry Fine.
Oh.
So it was Mo, Shemp, and Larry.
But also this other guy, Bill Haley or somebody like that, right?
And the Comets?
Ted Healy.
Ted Healy.
So maybe they weren't the Three Stooges, but Shemp was early on.
Jim Healy? Ted Healy?
Come on.
Wait. You just said something that I'm surprised to hear. Did you mean to say this? Shemp was Mo's actual brother?
Mo Howard, Shemp Howard. Both of them Horowitz, original last name. I think they are brothers.
Mo and Shemp are brothers.
You can either have Mo Howard or Les Howard. Which
now,
would
wait
you
a
like?
minute. Was Curly also a Horowitz?
Come on. You're going to put me on the spot here. I don't know.
But you're saying Curly Howard is a successor to Shemp Howard?
Shemp came first.
You know when they call somebody a Shemp? That means he's kind of a fucking schmo. A Shemp. What are you, a Shemp? Like it's a way to talk down to somebody.
I think a Shemp is from the Evil Dead movies, right? That's what Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell would call the sort of the dead.
We need a Three Stooges expert on this show at some point. Let's.
I thought I was a Three Stooges expert.
Yeah, but you didn't know that Shemp came before Curly, and he's blood.
No, nobody did.
Everybody knew this.
No. I don't think you knew this.
But I think what Scott is thinking, and I think he's right about this, is that when they started to make shorts, when they put themselves on screen, by that time Curly was in the act.
Curly was the original on screen, and then when did Curly die? Curly died, right?
I think he just got sick. He got too sick to do it.
So then he was gone, and then by the time Shemp showed up, he was pretty tired. This is tired Shemp. I would like to see young Shemp. So Shemp left the act to act in those movies, Ben, that you were talking about, that he's all over the place. Because after Shemp got back with his Stooge brothers, he wasn't getting outside gigs, right?
I don't think so.
See the way I'm doing this A&E story of Shemp Howard, and I'm just doing it by what I'm supposing?
Yeah.
I think it's a new form of storytelling. Now, here's how I feel about history.
I thought you were.
It's a Fox version of history.
I thought you were working on tying it back into Gabe doing work on our time.
How did we even get started on this tangent here?
We are all Stooges, and the fourth Stooge is Steve Sleeve, who's not here today.
But really, he's Zeppo Marx. He's
right.
The fourth Marx brother.
But which brings us to who is on the show today, and which also brings me to the wonderful rabbit hole I've been down these last week or so, which is Husker Du rabbit hole. So, Gabe, tell us who's on the show today.
We're both riding this rabbit hole because I've been down this Husker Du rabbit hole. It's pretty awesome. I didn't know what it would be like to be a 51. How old am I? 51-year-old dude.
Older than
discovering Husker Du. Not saying I'm Columbus or anything, because I'm surely not. But today's guest, Greg Norton. Who? Greg Norton, I said. That's who. bass player aficionado.
The Shemp Howard of Husker Du.
Oh, no. Somebody in the Three Stooges had a handlebar mustache early on. But
no.
It says it in here. I'm looking at it.
It says it on the Three Stooges Wikipedia.
I'm on the Wikipedia.
It says somebody had a Greg Norton stash.
Pics or it didn't happen.
I'm looking. Hold on.
You're looking.
I'm on the page. Handlebar. Jerry Howard. Shemp was gone. Haley and the two remaining Stooges, Moe and Larry, needed a replacement, so Moe suggested his younger brother, Jerry Howard, repeatedly took one look at Jerry, who had a long chestnut red hair and handlebar mustache. Who knew there was a fifth Stooge?
Jerry Howard?
Yes.
That's... So we've got Greg Norton from Husker Du. He's also in a new band called Ultrabomb with members of the Mahones and UK Subs. They've just been through touring in May, lighting up a Haley's Comet trail of...
A Ted Haley's Comet.
Ted Haley. Jerry Howard.
Did you see this band, Ultrabomb, in Chicago?
I did not see Ultrabomb. I was rehearsing that night, or I was working on a cut of the movie, because I know Off was playing that same night as well. And Dimitri from Off was like, hey, we're playing, you got to come see us. And I was like, yeah, but I also got to see Ultrabomb. But I did see Greg the next night at the GHB show.
GBH.
Metro.
Were you meeting Greg?
I did see him next at the GBH show.
Were you meeting Greg for the first time that night?
I wasn't.
How did you meet Greg for the first time?
Well, thanks for asking, Ben.
Well, wait. By the way,
I knew Gabe
I don't want to get any further. I know Gabe was going to let this just pass on by. You slipped in a little mention for the first time in quite a while of something called The Movie and about working on a cut of The Movie.
Yes.
Inquiring minds want to know, what is up with The Movie?
It's happening. It's happening. The movie is happening. It's just like, I'm working on the sound for it right now. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Greg Norton, take two. Go ahead. How'd you meet?
How did I meet Greg? I met, we were playing this Christmas show at First Avenue a few years ago before we went on tour with Soul Asylum. So our first show with them was this Christmas show that they were doing every year. And Greg's band, he was playing with this band Porcupine.
Right.
With an old friend of ours, Ian Prince. And there he was. I was like, hey, you're Greg Norton. And he was very, very, very nice to us. And we shared a few drinks and he gave me a hat. And yeah, that's how I met Greg. Is that how you thought it was going to go down, Gabe? Is that how you thought it happened?
No, I thought maybe you bonded over when you were touring and didn't cut your mustache and you said, hey, we're blood brothers.
No. Forget it. What were you going to say?
I was going to say you forgot to tell the part of that night that you met Greg at First Avenue because you were opening for Soul Asylum before you went on tour with them, that was the night that Dave Perner drew a dick on Ryan's drum kit.
Right. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow, that was a long way to go for that.
Well, it wasn't supposed to be that long, but there was a whole fucking thing that happened.
It wasn't. But
is that a thing? People drawing dicks on...
See? I got something out of him.
I was making a joke.
Oh, it didn't happen.
No. So we've all been going down this Husker Du rabbit hole in preparation for our esteemed guest this evening.
Am I the only one who was a Husker Du fan back in the day?
No, you're not the only one who's a Husker Du fan. It's just that I have not listened to them in quite a while.
Well, that's true for me too.
And I was thinking that my favorite record was Flip Your Wig. And then after this week, I don't even know anymore. Like I was kind of like, oh, I think it's New Day Rising. And then I started.
Don't discount Candy Apple Gray.
I started listening to Candy Apple Gray. I was like, I love this record because I used to listen to that a lot when it came out, and I'm listening to it. And, like everybody kind of like, they're like, the Warner Brothers records aren't that good. But I was like, wow, this record really good, and the songs are really good. They're really going for it on that record, right? And then I started listening to the really early stuff, you know, and then I was like, oh, this is fucking awesome. And then just before I got on with you guys, I was listening to Zen Arcade, and I was like, oh, no, maybe this is the best record. Gabe?
All I had to say is none of my friends traded tapes with me or gave me a mix of anything with Husker Du on it. And I'm kind of sour on that note because that sucks. I could have been 16 years old and checking out this band for the first time, but it didn't happen. They were like in my blind spot for most of my life, where none of my peers turned me on to them. I see a dude wearing a Husker Du shirt. I'm like, what the hell is this?
You never listen to Metal Circus or Everything Falls Apart?
No. And I'm kind of ashamed to say it.
Because that Everything Falls Apart stuff seemed like it was in your wheelhouse.
Well, it just didn't come across my radar. But now that I'm in my 50s and I'm like, okay, how do I want to attack this, you know, for the first time? Because I don't have any stuff. So I go to Spotify and say, this is Husker Du. Let's go ahead, play. And you just get everything.
Wait, you said that? Okay, this is Husker Du. Go ahead, play.
In my mind, I'm thinking,
Husker Du
just
me.
Let it rain. Let's go.
Okay.
And I'm playing it in the background while I'm working. And these songs just start staying in my memory. I'm like, hold on a second. I know the song. And I get to one song. It's like, this song is in my head. I heard it once. The Girl Who Lives on Heaven Hill. I'm like, holy crap.
That's the jam. Yeah.
How did this song get stuck in my head after one listen? That's the sign of a good band, right?
I think they're the perfect band for you, being a 51-year-old ex-punk. I think it's probably the most punk rock thing you've done all week.
You could say that, but I'm not an ex-punk. We got to get that straight.
Okay.
Well, you sound like Clint Eastwood right now at the end of Dirty Harry.
Straighten me out.
I'm an ex-metalhead who kind of skimmed into the punk realm via the Misfits.
Are you still a punk?
I never was punk. Never claimed to be punk.
Yes, but don't you think like Zen Arcade and New Day Rising and Flip Your Wig are like perfect music for people who, and you don't have to have outgrown punk, but you want to go to the next step.
They're definitely up my alley because when I listen to them, I'm thinking half of the bands I listen to probably grew up on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's
you ripped it off.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember I was in college and Candy Apple Grey had come out, and I loved it. And I was talking to one of the cooler kids.
How come every time Ben starts talking or asking a question, this is what happens? So I remember I was in college, and then Candy Apple Grey came out, and then I was like this, and then and Sally, where were you in Minneapolis?
You don't say. You don't say.
Oh, I realize I'm talking into the mic that you're not actually hearing me.
Right.
So I'm talking to this kid. I say, "Oh, Candy Apple Grey, Husker Du," and I had just sort of gotten into them because I was no major league punk rocker myself, and this kid was like, I'm over Husker Du. It turns out they really just want to be like a lo-fi punk rock Beatles. And I hear that phrase and I'm like, what's wrong with that?
What's wrong with that?
That's the best description of a band I could ever hear.
Yeah.
And Warehouse, for a double album that's long past the time that anybody in the band is talking to anybody else in the band, is a really good album. There's lots of good songs on Warehouse.
Yeah.
Speaking of really good albums, are you getting any feedback on our Lifers Live podcast now that they're actually out to people hearing them who weren't actually at the shows? Has there been any blowback from Herb Rosen after my...
Oh, yeah. So Herb apparently listened to the episode from which we put up last week, the second night in Chicago. He was not there. Well, the story is that you were in the car with him and he blows up on you and calls you a nerd, right, Ben? Yeah. Is that what happened? He says, listen, Riser, I'm not responsible for you tonight. You get to Delilah's with me and then you're on your own. You're a nerd. So today I get this from Herb. He goes, I just heard Ben's story about driving to Delilah's. Ha, ha, ha. It's pretty hazy, but it sure sounds like me.
Good. I'm glad I didn't.
I said, it's a great story. He goes, yeah, pretty spot on. Should we call him?
Sure.
Now let's give him a call, see what's happening.
Is he working tonight?
We're going to find out. Even if he is working, he probably doesn't want to be working, so he'll take any excuse he can to pick up the phone. Yes.
We got to find a way to get that plugged in.
Can you hear it?
Yo.
Hey.
What's up, man?
So you're on the podcast, and I told Ben that you finally listened to his story.
Yeah, Ben, did you get I sent you a text.
No, I did not.
He said he did not.
I think I saw Herb on Facebook.
Because I've sent him a few texts. One, like, way a long time ago from Shank Hall when I thought he was going to be there. Maybe I'm texting the wrong number.
I think you're texting the wrong number.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I don't want to say, you're going to edit this, right? Can I say if this is the right number for Ben? Obviously, we're not live.
Sure, no, we're not live.
Yeah, hold on, let me check, hold on. Where the fuck is it? Ben Reiser, is his number, info, 6, hold on.
Well, that's my work number. That's
his work number. You're calling his work number. How did you get Ben's work number?
Somebody must have sent it to me and imported his whole, fucking card or whatever. So I have all, but that's the primary number is the one I just said.
Are you making rum cornbread right now?
Am I what?
Are you making rum cornbread?
No, I'm sober. I'm sober as a judge.
No, well, I can't tell the difference.
Well, anyway, here is the text.
Thank God.
That I sent him earlier.
I'm glad you called, Scott.
Says, dude, I just heard your story about our ride to Delilah's. Sorry about that. It's pretty hazy, but it sure sounds like me. For some reason, I was under the impression you were more fucked up than I was, which is clearly not the case because your recollection is far superior to mine. Anyway, can't wait until next time. Love her.
Oh,
that was my heartfelt apology.
Oh, that's.
It was a hell of a story, though.
Yeah, it's a good story. It got a good laugh. Herb, did you know that Curly Howard was not the first Stooge? That Shemp was before Curly?
Yes, I believe I did know that.
Oh, fuck off.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, sorry.
All right, I gotta go.
Well, because my parents didn't allow me to watch the Three Stooges when I was a kid, so I went to extreme lengths to watch, to find the Stooges and watch any Stooges, anyone, anywhere. I took advantage of it, and then when it was available in other media, I got into it. Yeah, I was not allowed to watch that. And have I told you the story when? So Andy Warhol's Frankenstein was on Channel 11.
Yeah, you told me this story.
I told you this.
Yeah, you went to someone else's house. Yeah.
Exactly. So I went to the My Getter's house, who were the fucking hippies that let their kids watch and do anything.
Right.
But I suffered through a dry American cheese, not a grilled cheese, American cheese on 2 pieces of dry white bread sandwich, so I could, at 6 years old. I don't even know what Andy Warhol's Frankenstein was at 6 years old. I must have saw the commercial on Channel 11.
Well, did they not have mayonnaise?
What's that?
Did they not have mayonnaise?
No, no mayonnaise. What you guys do? Bye.
Well, to add some context to that, Scott.
More context.
As Scott was shoving me into Herb's car, he kept whispering to me, you'll, if nothing else, you'll have a great story to tell at the end of the night. And then
save it for the podcast, Riser.
And I was like, I do not. And I was thinking to myself, I don't want a good story for the rest of the night. I just want to go. I want to eat some pizza, which these motherfuckers, without telling me, are about to go eat without me. But if barring that, I just want to go back to the hotel. And so when Herb said what he said to me in the car and we got to Delilah's, I realized I don't need to hang out with Herb because I already got my good story. Now I can just go home. So it was great. I was able to get the story. Yeah, it worked out fine.
And you ended up finally getting to Pequod's last weekend.
Bringing that up. Yeah.
You went to Pequod's?
I spent some more time in Chicago for work, and my friend Scott Lucas met me for some dinner and a movie. We had a date, I guess you would call it.
Sure.
And then later on, maybe the next night, I was up till 2 a.m. doing.
I was prepared to take you to a concert.
That's right.
I don't want to mention who it was, but I ended up going over there.
Oh, you did?
Well, I didn't want to. I wasn't going to. I just went over there to pick up Justine. And let me tell you, I didn't understand why you didn't want to go. It was the worst show I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
So fucking bad. I don't want to mention who it was, but it was legit the worst show I think I've ever seen.
People with a sense of time will figure it out.
Just that fucking LA bullshit to the hilt. Oh man, that guy just deserves to fall in a manhole as quickly as possible. But go ahead. You had Pequod's.
I had Pequod's. It was delicious. And then, but so I went to see a movie at the Music Box at like 9:30 at night on a Thursday. Yeah, Thursday night. Thought I'd be all right.
No hard feelings.
No, not no hard feelings. I didn't even realize what that movie was when you kept saying that. I was like, what is he even talking about? And then I was, it's that new J-Law fucking thing. Did you see it, actually?
I did.
And it's no good?
It's not. But it's fascinating.
I loved You Hurt My Feelings, although the crowd was horrible. And I will say that the music in that movie is awful. They don't need music in that movie. That fucking it's such a wonderfully low stakes movie. It doesn't need the low stakes music. It sounds like interstitial music from like a Seinfeld episode or something. It's awful.
I don't know what your problem with that is.
Terrible.
You're talking to the wrong guys.
No, not
talk shit
Seinfeld.
About Seinfeld.
I'm wrong about Seinfeld. I would say Friends, but I know you guys like that.
Friends.
Too. Garbage.
Interesting that you bring up Friends. Oh. Are you done? Interesting that you bring up Friends. So my old friend Zach Waxer.
Oh yeah.
Gabe, you remember Zach Waxer, right?
The name sounds familiar, but I don't know.
Ben, you remember who Zach Waxer was?
Zach Waxer's the guy who waxed poetic about Dolly Parton's coleslaw.
Right.
Has he heard the podcast?
He writes for Food Talk. So he sent me a new email, and he's no longer talking about Dolly Parton's coleslaw. He's talking about Jennifer Aniston's salad.
Are we going to get him as a guest or something? What's
Listen,
going on?
I don't think this guy exists because, first of all,
by the way, I just got the text from Herb. He sent me the whole fucking thing.
Oh, did he? Okay. The picture of this guy is like a Pixar character. Anyway, Zach Waxer, it's not a real person. It can't be. So here's what he has to say about Jennifer Aniston's salad. In the world of viral food trends, one recipe took the internet by storm this year, capturing the hearts of millions. It all started with a social media post claiming that the recipe was Jennifer Aniston's daily salad during her time on the set of Friends. The post quickly gained traction, accumulating millions of views and prompting families across America to give it a try. The result? Instant love and adoration for what soon became known as the Jennifer Aniston salad. I mean, Gabe, can I get an amen?
He lost me somewhere along the way.
Social media has an undeniable influence on our culinary adventures, and this recipe was no exception. As the post spread like wildfire, come on. There's no salad recipe that's spreading like wildfire. People were drawn to the allure of indulging in the same dish that Jennifer Aniston supposedly enjoyed every day.
Wow.
There's a twist part, Gabe. Here's the part. Don't get crazy. However, recently it was revealed that the claim tying Jennifer Aniston to the salad was not entirely accurate. Disappointingly, it turned out that the salad was not a staple on the set of Friends, and Jennifer Aniston did not eat it every day. What do you think happened next, Gabe?
I don't know. Why don't you tell me?
Well, this revelation initially caused some confusion, but it did not dampen the salad's newfound fame. The salad was famous. Are you getting this? By then, it had already captured the attention and taste buds of countless individuals. Countless. But if I had to guess, I would say it was 18. Earning its own
Joey,
reputation
Ross,
as the
Jennifer
Jennifer Aniston salad. Gabe, your thoughts?
I can't follow this story. I stopped listening.
He's busy with work.
Here's one more thing he has to say about this. In the world of viral food trends, authenticity may sometimes be blurred, but the joy and satisfaction derived from trying and sharing a delicious recipe remain unaltered.
He brought it all back home.
So regardless of its origin story, let us embrace the popularity of the Jennifer Aniston salad and celebrate the joy it brings to our tables. Who's reading this stuff?
I think he's making it up. He's making it up.
He's got your number, Scott. He knows exactly what you want to read.
Listen, Zach Waxer, if you exist, Zach Waxer, come forward, motherfucker. We have some questions for you.
He's a content provider.
He's a cunt and a provider.
Hold on a second. Before we get this thing finished, somehow this didn't make it
to our guest, you mean?
Yes, we didn't get to the newfound interest. Or not, I wouldn't say newfound interest.
Okay.
You're playing some shows. I read today that you might be part of something that's going on at the Metro.
I'm playing tonight with Cisco Pike.
Yes, I was going to say that. Cisco Pike.
At G-Man. So get your shoes on, put your earbuds on, keep listening to this podcast, and get yourself over to the G-Man and a nunnery.
At what point in your career was Cisco Pike originally active?
Oh, I would say we were active maybe about 20 years ago.
Well, where was that?
15 to 20 years ago.
What album? What Local H album is that closest to?
Around PJ Souls. What's this other question you got, Gabe?
I saw something about a Michael Shannon tribute REM Murmur show at the Metro.
That's right. That went on sale today.
Today, Friday?
Friday. You should probably get your tickets for that. I'm just saying you might want to see that.
Sounds
if you're an REM fan and if you know anything about us as a band. That's all I want to say.
But also, this isn't just a local podcast, Gabe. What about, I saw another thing that you're playing a show with Stone Temple Pilots.
Yes.
You weren't going to mention that one, Gabe? That was not going to be brought up? Oh, he doesn't care.
Gabe, are you going to come you're going to come and announce? And now, bring. Gabe's back.
What happened?
Like the shell that he came out of at these shows, he's back in the shell.
No, there's no shell.
You came out.
He's a live performer. He's not into the studio stuff.
He was an entertainer. He was a performer. Now look at him. He's just back there going, when is this over? I'm not listening to this shit.
No, you're right. I'm not going to listen to it. But no, the fact that we didn't have any real podcast to record last week, I felt a little empty. Like something was missing.
Yeah, something's missing with you, all right.
Gabe, do you want to get back out on tour and do some more live shows?
I don't know if you can call that a tour,
well,
but the live show podcast was pretty cool. And yes, we should do it again.
Oh, you're in.
Well,
I think we should do it too, but you're going to have to get over your fear of flying, I think.
That didn't stop me. I made it up.
Oh, well, I mean, I think it's going to be, things go a lot quicker and cheaper for you if you get over that.
Not much cheaper.
Gabe, have you done anything on punk this week?
No, I haven't. I can't think of anything on punk.
No, you haven't, because you've been listening to Husker Du all week, and that's pretty punk. Hey, everybody, it's Greg Norton. Hi, Greg.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me.
You are a good-looking man.
Thanks. Got a nice fresh mohawk rocking for the summer.
Great. You're still doing the stash. You're doing right by that fucking stash. Now, was that a nod to Neil Peart and Rush? I'm guessing no.
No, and not to Raleigh Fingers either, or
right.
Probably a little nod to Salvador Dali, but yeah.
There you go. Obviously, I mean, how did it start with the mustache?
Well, there is a story behind this. So, Husker went out on the road one year. We're heading towards California to record Everything Falls Apart.
Mm-hmm.
And we left, and I forgot my shave kit at home, so I didn't have a razor, and so it just started growing out and was getting long and scraggly. And then we were in L.A., and I was hanging out with Des Cadena, and he's like, "Yeah, man, I like the stash. It's like looking good, you know." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's bugging me though, because it's starting to get long enough now. It's like the ends keep getting in my mouth." And he's like, "Oh man, you should just twist those up. Just twist them up on the ends, you know." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's a good idea." So I started twisting them up, and then I'm like, "Yeah, I kind of like that, like the look," and I just stuck with it.
And that was it.
That was it.
So it was all Des Cadena's idea.
Yep. I owe it all to Dezo.
How did that relation start between you and Black Flag and SST and all that stuff? Was that a show in Chicago?
It was actually. So Husker came down. We played this was like our first venture out of Minneapolis, and we played a couple of nights at I think the last iteration of Oz. I don't know if any of you guys remember the Oz.
No.
Mm-mm.
It was classic Chicago punk dive. Like, the toilets didn't work. They sold poppers behind the bar. It was a pretty wild scene, but So we were down there and we had played, and the guy that ran the Oz was putting on the Black Flag show with the effigies and Naked Raygun. And we had just met those guys that weekend when we played. So we were like, yeah, we'll stick around. And because he asked us to play the after party. So we stuck around and went to the show. And then we're at the after party. We play our set. And there wasn't really the backstage area was more of like a storage closet. And Grant saw this can of blue paint. And after our set, and, you know, and so for the encore, Brant went out and he like had this can of blue paint, and he like dipped some, poured some out, and we played another song. And then this girl, I want to say her name was Deb, but I can't remember if that's right or not. But all of a sudden she comes up and she scoops up some of this blue paint that Grant tossed out on the floor, and she goes over and scoops it up with one of his cymbals, and she was going to start dripping blue paint on his drum kit. And so Grant went over there to stop her and kind of grabbed her, and they slipped and fell in the paint, and so her entire backside was now covered in blue paint. She was wearing these leather pants, and I think it was Chuck and Spot and I can't remember, one of the other Black Flag guys. They thought it was hilarious, and so they were taking her around, and then they were like bumping her up against the wall and putting all these like blue paint butt marks all over the wall.
Yeah.
So that was our introduction to those guys. You know, obviously we knew about the label, and so we had also had some prior communication with Joe Carducci before he took over running SST for those guys. So that was our introduction to him, and we had recorded Land Speed Record after the Children's Crusade, and that was the summer. So this is like a year later now, and I don't know. It was at the end of the summer, so because that would have been March of '81.
Well, that Children's Crusade tour, like the stuff I've read about it, it appears that you guys just drove out there with no gigs booked, and you just stayed in these cities looking for gigs. Is that really the way it went down?
Pretty much, you know. So before we went out on that tour, DOA came through town, and we played with them and met their manager, Ken Lester. And Ken was, you know, he hooked us up with a lot of phone numbers, and you know, we also had played with DOA, or not DOA, Subhumans, and so with that list of numbers, we, you know, booked some shows. We had we started out playing a solid 5 nights at the Calgarian Hotel in Calgary, Alberta, which was kind of wild because at the first couple of nights, the bar wanted to fire us because nobody was coming in to see us.
So that was the plan. Like you went out there to do that. Yep.
And then from there we went to Vancouver, and you know, we played a gig at the Smiling Buddha. The Subhumans had us open for them over in Victoria on Canada Day. So, you know, we were, you know, after a week in Calgary, we probably spent about 2 weeks in Vancouver. And then another friend of ours that we knew from Minneapolis hooked us up with some people in Seattle. So we went down there and, you know, got a couple of gigs, managed to talk our way onto a bill with the Dead Kennedys as the very opening slot. And that's where we met Jello Biafra. We had one show booked after that, and that was down in Portland. And Biafra's like, "Ah, shit, come on down to San Francisco. You can stay with me. You know, I'll get you gigs at the Babue." So we went, and we actually ended up. We were probably lived with, you know, at Biafra's house for 5 weeks, maybe 6 weeks.
It's crazy.
But while we were there, you know, we played the Mabue Gardens a couple of times. We went up to Sacramento and played a show with DOA up there. We played like on a festival thing that was over in Berkeley. And at the time I was trying to line up shows in LA, and I had Mike Watt's phone number. So he and I had just been talking on the phone, and he's like, it's crazy down here. It's like the club scene is all fucked up and it's hard to get things booked.
Right.
So we just kind of gave up on getting down to LA. We booked a show at O'Banion's in Chicago, drove straight from San Francisco to Chicago, played that show at O'Banion's, and then the next night we were at the 7th Street Entry in Minneapolis, and that's when we recorded Land Speed Record.
Jesus Christ. So the guy that owned Melody Lane also owned a small shop over in St. Paul, though, on McAllister campus called Cheapo. And Grant and I both kind of transferred over to that store. And since it was on a college campus, we played a lot more punk rock. And one afternoon, Grant has a PA speaker hooked up to the stereo. He's got the speaker out on the sidewalk, and he's blasting the Ramones. And here's a Bob Mould fresh off the bus from Malone, New York, with his Johnny Ramone haircut and his brand new black leather jacket and his Chuck Taylor All-Stars. And he hears this and he goes over and he starts talking to Grant. He's like, "Oh yeah, I know the Ramones." Yeah. So that's how Bob and Grant end up meeting. I didn't meet Bob for a few months until after that. Actually, it was going to see the Ramones when the Ramones did a tour opening for Foreigner, and they were at the same Paul. What?
Yeah.
That was an actual tour?
That was an actual tour. Yep. The Ramones went out and did a whole tour as direct support to Foreigner.
Holy shit.
And, and they were out there, with the signs, "Gabba Gabba Hey," and, the crowd was like hating on them. And so we went, had a great time, and made fun of everybody else that was there. And then as soon as the Ramones were done, we left. So
yeah.
Quit while you're ahead.
Right.
Yep.
So you start Husker Du in 79, right? Somewhere around there?
Yep. We played our first shows March 30th and 31st of 1979. And those two shows, we were a 4-piece, and we were played nothing but cover songs.
Foreigner songs.
We didn't play any Foreigner, but
okay. But you had a keyboard player, right?
We had a keyboard player, and Charlie was the manager at Cheapo, where Grant and I were working. And and he had just graduated from McAllister and wanted to be a stockbroker and really loved the Cars. That was like his favorite band,
right?
And it's at like this neighborhood corner bar in St. Paul called the Randolph Inn. And in this story actually is, kind of amusing. It's like we were just there, Charlie, myself, my girlfriend at the time, another friend, Bill Hawes. We were all just hanging out. Charlie comes back from the bar and says, "Hey, Grant, we need to put a band together because I just got us a gig." Mm-hmm. And Grant's like, "Well, what are you talking about?" He said, "Well, I was at the bar getting beer, and I noticed that they had bands. So I asked the bartender, and she said, 'Why, you got a band?' And he said, 'Yeah, I do.' And she's like, 'Great, you're playing here on March 30th and 31st then.'" And he had told her that the name of the band was Buddy and the Returnables. So
sure,
this is like early February. So we, Grant's like, oh, well, I know this guy at McAllister. He's got a flying V. You know, we can get him to play guitar. And Grant was in a Beatles cover band at the time, where he was playing keyboards, and he initially was like, well, we can see if Jamie, the bass player from Train, would want to play with us. But the next day, Grant picks Bob up, brings him over to actually my house where Grant's drum kit was set up. Mm-hmm. And the three of us just jammed out a bunch of Ramones tunes. And then Bob and Grant are like, oh, shit, we don't need Jamie. Greg can play the bass well enough. So at that point, we learned 3 sets of covers and got ready for the gig, and then played at the Randolph Inn. The 3 of us were like, wow, I really like playing in this band together, and I like playing with you guys, but man, Charlie is like, man, he's like kind of square, and we don't really like him that much. So we decided to keep the band going without telling Charlie about it. Uh-huh. And so we had started rehearsing in the basement of a different record store where the owner was like, well, if you guys want to clean the basement out, I'll let you rehearse down there for free. Right. And so we started, every night after the shop closed, we would just go down there and fuck around. And we had, started writing music right away. And then Charlie calls up and says, hey, I got us another gig. And it was at the McAllister College for spring break on 420, which was like a big deal at McAllister because they're, a very liberal arts college. And so we headlined the student union that night. We play our set, and they're like, oh, you guys have like 15 minutes left. You can do whatever you want. So Bob, Grant, and myself jumped up, and we started playing our originals. Uh-huh. And Charlie's like, what's going on? What are you guys playing? I don't know this song. And he's like at the keyboard. He's trying to figure it out. And a friend of Grant's by the name of Balls Mikotowski, Balls actually was tripping balls that night, and he like reached up and pulled the plug out of the back of the Farfisa. So, and that was pretty much where Husker Du was born in earnest, where, we had played our first original songs as a 3-piece.
But you guys are already writing originals. You're well on your way.
But right after that, right after those first 2 shows at the Randolph Inn, we started writing. So we had Sex Dolls, we had MTC, I think probably Uncle Ron. We didn't have a whole lot of stuff at that point, but after that, I mean, Bob just started cranking out tunes, and and Grant was writing a lot of stuff. I was writing stuff, and we did that for the rest of the spring and started early summer. And and Bob, we played one show down the road from Northern Lights, where we rehearsed at a place called Christensen's, just another dive bar. And that guy let us play there. He paid us in a case of beer, and we were like, great. Yeah. So we went and played that show, and, a handful of our friends showed up, and went back to Bob's dorm room, drank the beer, and then, broke all the bottles in the hallway just because we're, drunk punks. Right. And, a couple weeks after that, Bob's like, well, we don't really have anything else going on this summer. I think I might go home. I might go back to Malone for the summer until, fall semester. And like literally the next day, Grant's like, gets a hold of Bob, gets a hold of me. He's like, oh man, we got an audition at the Longhorn, which was the punk bar in Minneapolis. And he's like, we got to get down there like right away. And so we pile all the gear into Grant's Duster, drive to the Longhorn. It's noon on a weekday. They've got like this businessman's brunch set up in their sidebar. And we go in and we start setting up all of our equipment. And then we start playing. And Hartley Frank, the guy that ran the club, comes out of his office. He's like, what the fuck is going on in here? And Grant's like, oh, well, we want to play here. And he's like, yeah, great. You can play here next Friday night. You can be the first band on the bill, but just shut the fuck up and get out of here. And, so evidently we passed the audition because Grant, oh yeah, we've got this audition. And, so we played at the Longhorn the following week. And then, the rest of the summer, actually, we would be flipping through the local arts magazine and see the Longhorn ad and go like, oh shit, we're on the bill for this night. We've got a gig. He would just randomly add us to shows. So we played a lot of shows like that at the Longhorn, and then worked our way up as our crowds grew, and then ended up headlining some shows. And by that point, the 7th Street entry over at what was then Uncle Sam's was open, and so that was the end of the Longhorn era, and then the start of the First Ave 7th Street entry era.
Yeah. The rivalry between you and the Replacements, how real was that? Is that just bullshit, or was that real?
Oh yeah, no, there was definitely a rivalry. So the Replacements, they were, they started out at the Longhorn about the same time that we did, and Tommy was underage, so he couldn't leave the dressing room. He had to stay in the dressing room until their set would go on. And the guy who was one of the DJs at the Longhorn also worked at Orfolk. He was the manager at Orfolk, and he was one of the 3 principals in Twin Tone Records. Mm. And so Peter fucking loved the Replacements, and so yeah, there was a rivalry definitely there between us, but it was a good rivalry. It was healthy, and each band wanted the other band to be the second best band in town.
Right. So speaking of rivalry, what about the rivalry? I can't say rivalry. What about the rivalry between Bob and Grant? At this point, was that rivalry there yet, or was it later until after Zen Arcade?
The rivalry really didn't start in earnest until we signed to Warner Brothers.
Really? Okay.
But it was one of those things. Bob easily wrote 2 to 3 times as many songs as Grant would write. And Grant was very prolific as well. Yeah. But, a lot of those Bob songs, it was Bob teaching himself how to write songs. He's like, hey, here's an idea. Let's do this. And a lot of those never made it out of the rehearsal space, or they would get played maybe once or twice at a gig at the Longhorn or the Entry. And then we'd move on to something else all the way through. Everything Falls Apart. And everything was I take that back. Up through Metal Circus, mm-hmm. All the songs were always credited as all songs written by Husker Du.
Right.
And so we all, because we were all collaborating on it. Bob made the decision that for Zen Arcade, it was going to individual songwriter credits, and at first I was just thinking it was Bob being, pissed off at Grant because we had just put out a record for a local band called Man Size Action. Grant did the artwork, and Grant forgot to put any credits on the record. So nothing for songwriters, nothing saying who was in the band and stuff like that. So I was just thinking that that's what that was all about. But then, later on, it's oh, okay, I see. The songwriter mechanical is different than the artist mechanical.
Right. And, publishing.
Right. So, that was that. I was still writing up, and contributing all the way up through Flip Your Wig. Mm-hmm. And then we signed to Warner's, and Bob made a statement in a band meeting one day saying basically that, Grant would never have more songs on a record that he would. And so that's when things really started to get testy with that. And Candy Apple Gray, it's I just went in and did my bass parts. I didn't do any background vocals. I didn't contribute any songwriting. And it's like, you guys fucking figure it out, you know?
Right.
I always tried not to pick sides, but Grant always tried to like loop me in on his side, thinking that like, you know, well, it's you and me against Bob.
Right.
But, you know, I didn't really want to be in that position, so I tried to avoid it. And then I started writing again for Warehouse, and, you know, the one song that we did actually go in and record of mine, then, you know, Bob was like, oh, I don't think there's a spot on the album for it. So it gets relegated to a non-LP B-side that was a UK only release.
I mean, you guys were the first of that whole scene and era to sign with a major. I mean, on top of everything that you're telling us, was the pressure just too fucking crazy?
It wasn't too crazy to start with, but you know what happens is like all of the things that you always did yourself and that you are used to doing and you know you're good at doing, slowly all of those duties get relegated to somebody else. It's like, we already had been working with Frank Riley when we're on SST for booking the band, but we were always self-managed. And, you know, when we signed to Warner's, it's like, well, you guys have to have a manager. So,
Right.
You know, so that's one thing. And then of course the demand for press gets bigger and bigger. Grant always, you know, took care of all the artwork and things like that. And they were trying to kind of take it over, but, you know, he pushed back on that. But it's, you end up, on one hand, it's like, oh, well, now I've got more time to do things. But on the other hand, it's like, well, I don't really have time for myself because there's all these other demands for your time with press and things like that. So I think that was one of the things I think that's where Grant really started to slip. And kind of go down, his drug experimentation.
Right.
And Bob always really embraced the business side of it. So he was actually really good with it. And I was like, oh shit, no, I've got, more time to golf. So, I went out and I played a lot of golf when we weren't on the road, and evidently that bothered Bob for some reason that I like to play golf, but whatever.
What's your favorite Husker Du record?
Well, that's always like asking me which one of my kids is my favorite, which, that changes by the minute, so.
Okay, good. That's usually not the answer people have.
Well, and that's it. It's like I always looked at each of the records as, and each one, it means something to me, equally, right? But they're snapshots in time. It's like, this is where we were at that point in our career. And, so they all have their moments, and they all also then kind of also have their not moments where it's like, yeah, but I love them. Actually, earlier this year, right after Spot passed away, I put on Zen Arcade and listened to the whole thing from the side 1 through side 4, and I hadn't done that in a long time. And it's like, God damn, that's a good record.
Yeah, it's fucking great.
I moved to Red Wing, Minnesota in 1983. So when the band broke up, I'm like, an hour outside of Minneapolis and not really, down hanging out and going to a lot of shows. So I got approached by a couple of guys, Colin Mansfield and Joe Jones, to start Gray Area. So, that was fun. It was completely different than what, I'd been doing in Husker. Grant records Intolerance for SST, and Bob, takes a year off or whatever, and then releases Workbook. So, Gray Area. I liked playing in Gray Area. We did one ill-fated tour, but we went out on the road in the summertime, and when we got back from that, our guitar player, Colin, was like, I don't really want to be a guitar player in a band anymore. I just want to do stuff on my computer. And Joe and I, the rhythm section, were like, well, it's kind of hard to be a fucking rock band without a guitar player. So that was kind of the demise of Gray Area. And shortly after that is when I started working in restaurant kitchens, and then ended up, that turned into a 20+ year career. So,
do you think you're done with music by then, or this is just the next thing?
It's the next thing. I didn't think I was going to, was done with music. actually, I went out with a guy named Sonny Vincent with his band Shotgun Rationale and did a Canadian tour in, like, I want to say 91. So, and that was a lot of fun. It's like Sonny was, old school New York punk kind of stuff. And Bob Stinson had done a stint in the band with Sonny. Cheetah Chrome had played with them. Mo Tucker has played in Shotgun Rationale briefly. So, and it was a lot of fun. And Sonny wanted to take the band to Europe. There's tons of gigs over there. The fans are great. And I'm like, I would love to, but I'm going to need to see, like, contracts and shit and guaranteed money. Because I, have a house that has a mortgage, and I just can't, like, take off to Europe and not know that I'm going to make any money. Right. And he could never produce any of those things. And so then, at this point, I'm getting more and more deeper into learning how to cook and moving up the ranks in some really good kitchens, and then end up, getting my own kitchen type of thing. And the guy that I learned how to cook from, my Lenny Russo, it's a great chef, nominated for James Beard Best Chef Midwest like numerous times. Every time he's been nominated, he always either loses to somebody from Chicago or somebody from Kansas City,
Fucking Chicago.
Fucking Chicago.
Yeah, fucking Chicago. Yeah. But, and Lenny was like, well, you've got a natural talent for cooking. You've got a great palate. I think, you can't just keep, you're going to need something to do when the rock and roll isn't happening. So, like I said, it turned into a great career, but I went a span of 14 years without even picking up a bass.
Yeah. So, I mean, what made you pick it up again?
Well, another great story. So there's a jazz piano trio called the Bad Plus. Mm-hmm. Dave King, the drummer, and Reed Anderson, the bass player. They're from Minnesota. And they had just released a record called These Are the Vistas on Sony. And a customer of mine at my restaurant brought me the CD and said, I really think you should listen to these guys. They're really fucking good. And on that particular release, they do an arrangement of Smells Like Teen Spirit, which I'm like, well, that's kind of crazy. And then they were playing a show at a jazz club in Minneapolis called the Dakota, and read this article, this interview that they had done right before that. And Dave was talking about how Husker Du actually was a big influence on these guys. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. I mean, these guys are fucking great jazz musicians. So I go to the Dakota, I see that show, and at the end of the set, end of the night, I see Ethan Iverson, the piano player, and I just went up to him and I'm like, oh, hey, yeah, it's like great set. Yeah, my name's Greg Norton. It's like, hey, do you know if like Dave is around? It's like, I'd sort of like to meet him. And Ethan had like no idea who I was. He grew up in a jazz and classical vacuum, which is why they ended up playing Smells Like Teen Spirit, because he claimed he had never heard the song before. And Dave and Reed were like, there's no way that you have not heard this song because it's everywhere. And he's like, nope, I haven't heard it. So then they made him learn how to play it, and then they recorded it, which I think is fun. So anyway, I meet Dave right after that. And he's like, oh, yeah, Dave's over there somewhere or whatever. So I go and I meet Dave, and Dave's like, holy shit. And like literally one of the first things he says is like, I've got this great idea for a band, and you would be the perfect bass player for it. And I'm like, wow, okay, fucking cool, And so that band ends up being the Gang Font, which is the record that we put out on Thirsty Year, and I think it came out in 2006. So it literally took a couple of years from Dave first saying like, hey, we're going to have this band. And then every time I'd see him, it was like, oh, yeah, we're going to do this band. And I got to a point and it's like, yeah, sure we are.
Yeah, right.
Right. I'll believe that when it actually happens.
how'd you hook up with Porcupine and my buddy Ian Prince?
Ian, Ian's another great fucking drummer.
Yeah.
So I had met Casey in La Crosse. The Meat Puppets were coming through La Crosse. It was I think the first tour that they did after Chris joined the back into the band.
Right.
But Porcupine opened up for him, and I was like, oh, these guys are pretty good. I like these guys. And Casey was working at a guitar shop called Dave's Guitars, which is, one of the better renowned guitar shops in the U.S. And, he and I stayed in touch after that. And a couple years later, I've got a improvisational rock band called Con Queso. And we actually played a couple of shows with Porcupine in La Crosse and up in Minneapolis. And, I just always liked Casey's voice and his songwriting style. And out of the blue, he called me up one day and was like, saying like, yeah, so Davey Reinders, our bass player, and he just can't do the band anymore. It's like with his job and things like that. So he's like, yeah. So I had to replace Davey, and I put this other guy in, and I tell you, it's like it's like Ian and I are just like don't know what to do because the guy has no stage presence. He just kind of freezes up when we play live, and so we were like, we just didn't know what to do. And then another mutual friend that worked with Casey at Dave's was like, well, why don't you call Norton?
Yeah.
Give Norton a call.
Get the guy with all the stage presence.
Yeah, see what he's doing. So I'm like, hell yeah, I'd love to join Porcupine. That would be great. So that's how Porcupine, my stint in Porcupine started. And man, playing with Ian was a real fucking treat because that guy is an amazing drummer.
Go to Con Queso. Now, how does a improvisational rock band? What do you show up with the bare bones of a couple of songs and then you go off on it? How does that work?
Well, it went more like this. Where I had my restaurant at the time was an old J.C. Penney department store downtown Red Wing, and the entire basement was empty because the only way we would have been able to have it open to the public, we would have had to literally build these fire exits leading up to the street and all this stuff. So we just left it empty. So we have this big, huge basement. One of my bartenders, a guy named Seth Mooney, he was a drummer, and I'm like, oh shit, you should set your drum kit up down in the basement. I'll bring my bass amp over, and then another friend, Bernd Evenson, he was good friends with Seth. So, the three of us just started to just jamming together, really. And it was one of those things where we would play after the restaurant closed. We'd go down and we like to joke that the more scotch we drank and the more pot we smoked, the more we sounded like Cream.
So now you're doing Ultrabomb.
Yeah.
Which Ultrabomb is super fucking cool.
And again, another crazy fucking origin story. So a couple of years ago, Casey decides to kind of, change things up with the band.
How so? I mean, I've heard that, but I don't know what that means.
Well, it was one of those things where I don't know, things just weren't quite working out the way that we had anticipated things going, or I don't know. There were just we'll just leave it as the PC. Things just didn't work out.
Okay.
And so Casey, and so Ian goes off and he does bird hands with Alan Epley, and I'm just kind of sitting around not doing anything. And the odd thing is then all of a sudden, Kate, this is probably a good year or more since the three of us played our last show together. Mm-hmm. And Casey books, I see it's oh, Porcupine's got a show. And so Casey plays a show as Porcupine with 2 other people that aren't Greg or Ian. Oh. And people were like going like, what the fuck's going on? Where's Ian? Where's Greg? You know? And so then this other guy puts up a post on Facebook talking about like, you know, it's like, doesn't really matter who's in the band. It's Casey's band. And he's like, I'm in the band now and blah, blah, blah. And it's this big, long thing. And it was like, okay, well, you know, Casey had plenty of time to say something to the general public about what he wanted to do. And he just chose not to. Instead, he shows up with 2 other guys and plays the thing, which then led to a bunch of confusion. And then this guy puts up this post. And my only comment on it was, well, that clears that up.
Yeah.
And Casey got all pissed off at me and like, you know, blocked me on Facebook, which I thought was funny. And, but right after that happened, Finney McConnell saw that whole thing on Facebook and he's like, oh, well, you don't have a band now. You should start a band with me. And I'm like, okay, well, what are you thinking? He's like, well, I know the best punk drummer in the world is we're old mates. Jamie Oliver, he plays in the UK Subs. And I'm like,
right.
Well, that sounds kind of cool, but like he lives in London, you live in Toronto, I live in Red Wing. And he's like, oh, well, you know, we just get together every once in a while. We'll just do it for a laugh. We'll play some Husker covers. We'll play some Mahones. We'll play some UK Subs. We'll just, you know, play a few times a year. We'll just do festivals. And it's like, okay, sure, why not? I'm in. Let's do it. And so we picked the name Ultrabomb. A friend of Jamie's like came up with that. He's like, yeah, I really like this name, Ultrabomb. And then I had that photo of my daughter Coco, where a friend put the atomic explosion behind her, and I'm like, holy shit, we could use this as the album cover type of thing. And we're like all laughing, going like, oh, this is great. And you know, Finney's said, it's like, oh, I talked to the guys at True North Records. They put out the Mahones and my solo stuff. And they said like, yeah, we'd love to put your record out. So we've got a record deal. And then he's like, oh, I talked to Ute at Mad Touring in Germany. And she said she'd book us. So there you go. It's like, we've got an instant band. We've got a label. We've got an agent.
Right. It's all right there.
Yeah. And we're like, oh, perfect. So, a couple weeks later, Finney sends me a message. He's like, oh, I'm going to be in Berlin. I've got some studio time booked. I'm like, you know, I've been writing riffs and he's like, oh yeah, Jamie's actually in Berlin too. Jamie's hanging out. And I was like, you know, if this is going to work, I should probably maybe go to Berlin and meet these guys and make sure like this is actually a thing.
Right.
So, I booked a flight to Berlin, landed on a Wednesday night. Jamie meets me at the airport. First time I'd ever actually met Jamie face to face. He had bright blue hair at this point. So we get back into Berlin. He drops me off at the hostel, which was close to the studio. And then the next morning, go into the studio. We're setting up and Finney shows up. First time I'd ever actually met Finney face to face. So there's the 3 of us in a room for the first time ever. And then Finney's like, oh man, I've got these killer riffs. And so he'd start playing a riff and I would start putting a bass line to it and Jamie'd start playing and we'd like hammer out an arrangement and, you know, play it a couple of times. And it's like, okay, yeah. We told Hansi, the engineer, it's like, yeah, record this one. And so then we would record. And
this sounds a lot like improvising again, Greg.
Well, but I mean, this time, and you know, there was actual like, you know, there was an actual riff. It's like with chords and stuff to play off of, and as long as Jamie was like happy with the drum take, we moved on to the next one. And then after
this also sounds familiar, by the way. First take stuff, moving on.
Yep, exactly.
You didn't happen to record and mix this in 85 hours, did you?
So we literally wrote four songs the first night. We wrote another 6 the next day, and then it was towards the end of that second day that Hansi, the engineer, is like, so you wrote that song just now? And we're like, yeah, we wrote all of the songs just now. It's like the first time we've ever been together. It's like we just wrote 10 songs. He's like, I can't believe that you guys just wrote these songs. And so Jamie had to go drum. He was doing a gig with some German band on Saturday. So it was just Finney and I in the studio, and Finney's, doing some, laying down some rhythm guitar tracks, and, we're cleaning up a couple things. And I had all these lyrics. And so we printed them out, and I'm cleaning up some bass stuff. And Finney's like looking at my lyrics, and I get done, and I walk in, and he's like, I've got the whole record all figured out. Yeah. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, these lyrics are perfect. It's like this goes with this. And so on Sunday, Jamie's back in the studio with us. Finney fucking goes in and sings the entire record in one day. And at the end of the day, we still had some time left. And the second night when we were out to dinner, we were talking about maybe like doing like a hidden track bonus single type of thing, and we're like, yeah, we should do a cover song, and we all decided that Sonic Reducer was like the perfect song. So then we banged out Sonic Reducer, and I sang it, one take, by the way, and that was that.
You guys have done some shows.
Yeah, we have done some shows. So after getting the record done and being all excited and recording, we were going to do a quick, 5-date run in Canada. And then that got canceled because of COVID. And then the following spring, we were going to do some dates in England. And I had a family crisis where my sister came down with like this rare form of leukemia and literally spent 5 weeks in the hospital on a constant like chemo type thing, and she's great, by the way. She pulled out of that and she's doing great. All her hair's growing back now and everything. So that was like, cancellation number 2. And then we were going to try to reschedule Canada. And Jamie shows up at the airport after being told that he didn't need a visa to get into Canada. And then he gets there and they're like, oh, well, where's your visa? And he's like, oh, well, they told me I don't need one. And they're like, well, we changed our mind. You need one. So, so that gets canceled again. And then we have another run of shows lined up for May of last year. And I get diagnosed with prostate cancer. So I'm like, well, I hate to break this to you guys, but I think I kind of need to take care of this. So Jamie and Finney, we had in Minneapolis, there's a place called the Hook and Ladder Theater, and they do a festival every summer, and they wanted us to headline. So Jamie and Finney flew in for that. We played. That was our first official gig. Went great. It was just sloppy enough to be extra special, and everybody had a blast. And 4 days later, I was in the Mayo Clinic getting my prostate out.
Wow.
So then
and you're okay from that.
And I'm okay from that. So had the prostate out. They said all my margins were clean. The cancer was all still contained in the prostate. But I took the rest of the year off to recover from that. And then we got the offer from Punk Rock Bowling, and we put together a tour for May to get us out to that. And I would say the only lingering thing from my prostate surgery is I discovered that when I'm on stage and I'm jumping up and down, I tend to piss myself a little bit.
Oh,
but
it's punk rock.
That's not so bad. I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be something else.
No,
but the pissing, that's not so bad. I thought it was going to be something else. And I went, just thinking about what it was going to be.
Yeah.
So that around then is when I saw you in Chicago.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we played Reggie's the night before that GBH show. Of course, we were up against Off was playing at Lincoln Hall. So
it was a big weekend for punk rock. That was crazy. I remember.
Yep.
But the best part was hanging out in the Metro with you, and then you lean over to me and you go, I haven't been here since the last time I played here with Husker Du. And I got like chills. I was like, whoa.
Yep. Yeah.
I got chills. I got chills when I put on this Ultrabomb album, and as a longtime Husker Du fan, I was like, holy shit, this sounds like a long lost, better recorded Husker Du album. It sounds fucking fantastic, man. So great.
Yep. I love the way it turned out. And it's, I think it's one of those things. I mean, I'm bass the way I play bass. So somebody's like, oh, all those Husker bass lines. And I'm like, well, they're Greg Norton bass lines, but I hear what you're saying, and Finney is a huge fucking Husker Du fan and a Bob Mould fan. And, so the first song that he went in to sing was Time to Burn. Mm-hmm. And I had to go, Finney, stop trying to fucking sing like Bob Mould. just sing like you know? And he's like, oh, sorry, bruv, I can't help it. I'm such a huge fan, so. So
Gabe, do you even want to try your fucking question that you do every episode? I think it's an
interesting question for Greg because of the rivalry. It might be interesting.
I got a couple questions. I don't have just one, but we have a running question that we ask all the guests.
Okay.
And it's my job.
It's a little unfair for you.
A little unfair, but hey, you never know. You never know. I have a prediction before, and Ben has a prediction before what the guest is going to say. I'm not going to predict this one. I think it's too obvious. But if you had to pick between two bands to listen to on a deserted island, you can only listen to one of these two bands: Iron Maiden or The Replacements.
I'd go with the replacements.
Of course. Yeah. I can't fault you for that. For that.
Oh, you can't fault them?
No. We had Tommy Stinson on here, and I kind of made a fool of myself when I tried to say something before that. And
yeah, but he picked Iron Maiden, right?
I don't remember. Did he pick Iron Maiden?
I don't think you've asked him.
I don't think I asked him, but
no, you did, and he said Iron Maiden.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
I don't remember. But anyway, Greg, you have like a memory like nobody I've ever heard before. You're telling me stories about 40 years ago. I'm hearing for the first time here talking about, the guys from Black Flag and all these other people. I can't remember what I had for lunch today. You need to write a book. Have you ever thought about writing a book?
I have thought about writing a book. I actually started working one probably in the early 90s and didn't get real far with it. When Michael Azarad was doing his interviews for our band Could Be Your Life, I had mentioned it to him, and then he's like, "Oh yeah, I can help you with that." Then once the interviews were done, he's like, "Yeah, pretty much, yeah. You just put some notes on some paper and send it off to a publisher." That was his advice. So
yeah, he's not going to help the competition.
I think at that point he had already probably had his deal set up with Bob to help him write his book. Oh. But I always thought that if I did write a memoir, I'd call it Shed a Little Light.
Uh-huh.
Nice.
Okay. But just saying that everything that you read in our band Could You Be Your Life was not necessarily all accurate.
Oh, yeah.
It just seemed to me that he wanted to sensationalize a lot of the bands. It seemed like the only band that he really didn't take any digs at or try to get dirt on was the Minutemen. And that was probably out of reverence of Dee Boone passing away. So,
right. What especially irked you about your chapter in that book?
Well, it just wasn't accurate. It's like we weren't on meth. We weren't taking, all of the speed that he said that we were on. And when we recorded Zen Arcade, we were drinking bonus cups, which is something that the Descendants came up with spot where it's like 3/4 of a cup of Folgers Crystal, and then another. Top that up with sugar and then just hot water out of the water machine, and stir it up, and it's this sludge, and then you'd slam that down.
Ooh,
the bonus.
That sounds worse than speed.
Yeah. But it seemed like he wanted to sensationalize drug use in the band. It's like, yeah, sure, I've done acid, but not every single day for an entire summer like he put in the book,
right? Type
of thing. And then in Bob's book, the Husker chapter was basically just kind of lifted. It was the Michael Azarad version of the Husker history, and and Bob even admitted that his memory of that decade was a little blurry, and there were definitely some, things that outright just never fucking happened in Bob's book that they put in there, that it's like, well, that's bullshit. That is not what happened. That is not how that went down. And somebody told me later that because Bob had a foggy memory on it, and they were interviewing people that would have conflicting stories as to what happened. They decided to go with the one that I don't know, sounded better, or
right.
Whatever. So
print the legend.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like, and maybe I'm getting this wrong, but it sounds like out of Grant and Bob, that Bob was the bigger pain in the ass in the band.
Well, Grant was full of mischief, and you never really knew what Grant was going to do. He was the live wire. Bob was, like I said, he was very business minded and knew what he wanted and knew what he wanted to do and how things, nothing wrong with that.
No, sure.
Over the years, Bob has definitely mellowed quite a bit. He seems a lot happier these days, and I'd also heard from some other people that Bob was kind of shocked when his book came out about how people were like, wow, Bob sounds kind of like a dick. And I don't think he was expecting that. And I think he's definitely is not like that anymore, or at least Fry's not. So
I wanted to ask you something. I saw Husker Du play probably 6 or 7 times over the years, and I don't remember ever hearing any of you, but especially not Bob or Grant, say a word on stage in between songs. Like no banter between the three of you, and certainly nothing communicated to the audience except for the songs themselves, which is great. Fine. There's bands like that. But then the year after you guys broke up, I saw Bob do a solo acoustic show at Maxwell's. And the place was packed, and we were all like sitting down on the floor because he was sitting down on a chair on the Maxwell stage and just playing an acoustic guitar. And about halfway through, he starts talking to the audience in between songs. But what he's mostly saying to us is, hey, there's kind of a weird vibe in here tonight. I thought there'd be some more interaction between me and you guys. And it's kind of, are you guys okay out there? And I'm thinking, like, this is a guy who's been on the road for like 10 years. And as far as I know, has never said a word to the crowd. And now he's sort of seems taken aback that we're not trying to engage him in between songs and stuff. Did I just miss the talkative Bob Mould on stage over the years, or was that?
No, not really. I mean, so some of the really early recordings, like from the Longhorn and some of the early entry shows, there was a little bit more banter, but we just, especially once we started touring, it was like we'd write the set list and we just actually didn't want to talk to the audience. And so then we just, got into it. It's like, we're just going to come out, we're just going to play. We're just going to start playing. And then when we're done, we're going to leave. And, and that kind of became one of our things, we weren't storytellers, except for the music. So,
right.
Well, I don't know. I watched, the Husker Du clip on Joan Rivers today, which I remember seeing when it happened. And having Joan Rivers talk about whether or not you guys are selling out was so crazy. Like her trying to have that conversation with you guys, and you're just like, what are you talking about?
Right. Yeah. Ian McKellen.
Yeah.
Gandalf.
He was on the episode. Yeah.
Yeah, he was, so he actually, when they went to commercial break before we played, he said, he was the one that's, looked at the camera and said, and coming up next, Husker Du, so it's like, wow.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
What was he doing back then? Why was he there?
I can't remember, because that was before Lord of the Rings and all that stuff. Yeah, I'm not sure. He's probably doing Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why would he be on Joan Rivers? It's so, we got to figure that out. We'll talk about that later or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being here, Greg. This is great. And, you're great. And thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
Well, it's been a lot of fun talking to you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Yeah. You don't have anything to send. Do you need anything,
Nope.
Ben, for him to send
Nope.
anything? No.
Nope.
No. You're good to go then.
There you go. Yeah, just the usual, like, follow Ultrabomb on Spotify. Go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. Blah blah blah. It's the only way.
Smash that like button.
Anymore. Yeah.
Smash the like button.
Yeah. It's like every time you do, I'll every 100 times you do, I'll earn a penny. So
Yeah.
yeah.
An angel will get its wings.
Never met a ghost.